Good evening and salutations, my B&B fans. Let's start off with Taylor and Rich for a minute, because Taylor, in a way, has been bothering me for quite a while, because Taylor's the type of person that will sit there and say, well, there's no rush, there's no pressure, like in today's episode. But then say things like, "Oh, I love you, and I never stop loving you," and stuff like that. And she gets all up in his face, and she talks about how great it was kissing him, and it's like you're literally sitting there giving him two conflicting views. On top of the fact that one minute she talks about how she can't really move, he really can't move on. They can't start something until he finds a way to move on. But yeah, towards the end of the episode, she's laying in his arms. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know if she's trying to do mixed messages on purpose or if she's the type of person. Because, well, granted, she does seem like the type of person that will sit there and come off like sweet and innocent, this, that, and the third. But yet, this man has not even actually had a divorce. He literally started to talk about he just got his freedom from Brooke, and you're already up in his arms. Like, really? But you want to sit there and talk about there's no pressure, there's no this, that, and third. But you have no problem being all up close to him in his face and everything. What are you doing? And Hope. See, this is one of those things where it's like you need to left your mother. You need to sit there and stop meddling. And granted, this goes for Steffi and Taylor also, but you need to sit there and stop meddling in your parents' affairs. Because, Brooke tells Hope that she wants to sit there and have Rich be happy. She wants to let him go, and she feels that Taylor would be the better choice. This is something that she decided, and yet Hope is sitting there fighting her on it. And yeah, I understand that Hope is like, well, you may say one thing, but you may mean something else, and you really shouldn't sit there and give up on him. I'm not giving up on you too, and you shouldn't give up on the miser. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like seriously, what are you doing? She made up her mind. She made up her mind pretty much. She decided that, hey, listen, I put this man through a knot between Deacon and Bill and probably the other men that came before them. Maybe it'd be better if I just kind of let him go. I mean, granted, it didn't help that she kept, pretty much feeling sorry for herself, calling her a name that I'm not comfortable saying, um, just so casually. And what I hate to sit there and say this, but with the pity party, pretty much, I understand why Hope wanted to, like be back with Ridge, get your confidence back, get this back up, stop feeling sorry for yourself. I don't want you feeling all down and stuff, but it's like, that's her choice to make, and she's got to sit there and live with it. Just like she had to sit there and live with the consequences, not of drinking, but of inviting Deacon into the house, making him feel way too comfortable spending, time with her. It's one thing if Deacon was just hanging out with Hope and getting to spend time with her and stuff like that. But now, you know, you invited him to the house and you invited him into your life. And those are the consequences that you need to accept. This is what you did. And Hope with this whole, no, you need to sit there and fight for him and yada, yada, yada. Why don't you focus on your marriage and your kids? How about you do that? How's that thing going? Is it good? Good? You want to stay that way? Yeah, focus on your thing that's going on. Steffi is just exhausting. Oh my goodness, Steffi is exhausting. Steffi is the type of person that I feel like you need to sit there and match her energy. Otherwise, she's just not liking it. And I just mean that with anything. But specifically, she comes in there and she's like, Thomas, so what's going on? I feel like you're not Team Taylor. I mean, you're not really Team Taylor. You sitting there trying to defend Brooke. And Thomas like, listen, we got what we wanted. We wanted our parents back together. They're back together. There's no need to sit there and kick her when she's down. But clearly, it's not enough for Princess Steffi because Steffi's like, no, what are you talking about? Brooke did this. Brooke did that. It's all Brooke's fault. Da-da-da-da. Why don't you on board me? Why don't you on board me with hating on Brooke? That's literally what she's saying. No matter what word she's snipped there using, that is literally what she's snipped there saying. She's just like, I can't believe you not on the same level as me as far as hating this woman. This is what we were doing together. Well, what happened? Your energy's not matching mine. It must be exhausting being her sister because it must be exhausting being in the same room with that woman. Let's talk about this disrespectful Grace and his dingbat, this dingbat Paris and no personality Carter. Because why not? Because we're still doing this. So disrespectful Grace clearly does not want Carter, who is in his house, to actually have him speak. And she's all like, well, don't my opinions matter? Don't my feelings matter? No. No, they do not matter. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I listen, I know that people are going to sit there and be upset and be like, oh, well, that's her mother and her opinion. No, it does not matter. Because at the end of the day, it's about her daughter and what her daughter wants. It's not about her. It's not about Grace. It's about her daughter and what she wants. So the fact that she kept saying, well, doesn't my opinion not matter? No. It is nice, but it's not needed. No. Like, no. Go out and find a man. Go, like, don't you have, like, patience or something like that to do? You're coming at this man's house at, it could have been 11 o'clock in the slow down a little bit, because I, let some woman sit there banging at my damn door at 11 o'clock at night. You know what? Let's just kind of change that around, because that might actually end up a little bit differently. My point is, she talks about the Forester and her job and what this would mean. And, granted, I mean, let's be honest, they clearly don't have an HR department because Donna got fired for giving Eric an erection. So we don't really know exactly what could have wound up happening with Paris and her job. And Paris seems like she doesn't really care, which is really odd because I'm pretty sure they are paying that woman a fortune. And she seems like she doesn't really care. She really does not. But of course, Grace, being the POS that she is, like, what about Zende? You should be with Zende. You gotta be with Zende. Why don't you be with Zende? I mean, you keep harping about him so much. You keep sitting there being up in his face. Oh, you're such a good person. You're such a good man. Why don't you go out with him then? I mean, clearly Paris doesn't want him. So why don't you have him? Why don't you have him? You can just take him. But the fact that she has the audacity to sit there and be like, but no, you're going to sit there and be with him, and I'm not going to let this stand. Which is, I used to actually get upset when she started, when she started with her whole, I'm not going to let this stand, this, that, and the third. And now I just look at this like, you do realize that you're talking to a grown ass woman, and you're so delusional that you're sitting there telling her what she can and can't do, like she's a 7-year-old child. And you would honestly sit there and think that Paris at some point be like, I'm sitting there looking at this whole thing like, so Paris, you cool with that? You're a grown ass woman. You cool with your mom just sitting there just telling you what to do? Just walking up in your boy toy's house and just yelling at you and being all sorts of disrespectful? You cool with that? Because I don't even want to be cool with that. But, well, let's be honest. You're a dingbat, so I'm not really too surprised. Now she does, because Carter must somewhere along the line lost his balls and was just like, let me try to strip my personality away so I can sit there and challenge Carter. Just give me a minute. Paris, if Zende says, if Zende proposed to you, you should just sit there and say yes. You should do it because he's better for you and reasons. And Paris just kind of looks and like, what? What do you mean? I'm sitting there watching this whole thing. I'm like, how long was this show in the air for? Oh my goodness, this show is something else. You know what? If nothing else, this show can make me laugh. And I gotta give him props for that. I gotta give him props for that. This show can make me laugh. I don't think that the stuff in this show is intentionally funny, but my goodness, this show can make me laugh at just some of the stupidest things that will happen. If you sit there and you watch Paris look at Carter like she's confused, she's in a daze, like she's not understanding what he's saying. And I'm looking at this whole thing like the look on her face is hilarious. Carter and his soulless stare looking at her like you should do it. You should sit there and say yes next time he's I'm trying so hard not to laugh. Okay. Um Let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything. Yep, I feel like that's about it. So with that being said, I'm gonna go. I want to thank you for watching. You know what? Before I sit there and go, somebody was sitting there saying like the show was not as good as it was back in 2010. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think a lot of these shows were as good as they were back in the day. Um, Hell, even GH was not as good as it was back in the day. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting there saying they're not good, but I don't know. Maybe they just had a certain magic back then. Maybe they had less filters back then. But I was just not there reading the comment. I remember reading that. I was like, they kind of got a point, but at the same time, I also sit there and look at it this way. This is something I was talking to my friend DC Sanctuary about. That sometimes we will sit there and we'll complain about some of these soap operas. Like, this episode wasn't really that good. This episode wasn't really that great. Oh, this was okay. You know, the show wasn't really as good as it was back then. And I gotta sit there and look at it and be like, well, let's look at it this way. You've been watching the show for a very long time. When you first watched it, it was probably really great because it was new and it was exciting and it was something different. I remember watching One Life to Live. This is the first show that I watched, first soap opera that I watched. And I remember just being like dumbfounded. Like I just couldn't believe I was sitting there watching it and at the time it was like forbidden fruit for me. I was like, oh guys sitting there watching soap operas, this is unheard of. You know what, let me just sit there and just see a little bit. I've been watching it in the last 20 something minutes. And I'm like, and I don't know if anyone remembers this, if anyone watched One Life to Live, this was during a train crash scene where you had Will, you had Jessica, you had one of the Vega, but Christian. And they were walking out with Will, and Bo just kind of let it happen. And even though that this dude literally was a prisoner, he kind of just stood there and looked at it like I should probably do something. I don't feel like what Ace is doing is right. Well, I'm going to sit there and look the other way for now. And then watching the next file, I was like, you know what, let me watch the next episode. And then from the next episode, I was hooked. My point is that when you first watch these soap operas or whatever, they're very interesting and this, that, and the third. But over time, I don't know if it's your expectations or it's just you watching the show for a long time. But after a while, I feel like maybe sometimes the show doesn't get dull. Maybe you just got so used to it that in some ways it's like it doesn't hit the same. I don't know. That's just my little assessment of the situation. With that being said, I'm going to go. I want to thank everyone for watching. Be safe. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.